Good evening. I'm Kate Macmillan, the Library Service Coordinator, and tonight it is my distinct honor to welcome Kyle Lukoff. A little bit about Kyle. He has worked at 5 bookstores, 4 school libraries, and 3 schools, and he's the only children's author to win the Stonewall Award twice. And this year he won the Newbery Honor Award. He refers to himself, and I quote, as a proud, unabashed pessimist who worries about the world we live in. But somehow he manages to write books that give hope to all different kinds of kids that the world will one day be full of growth and change. As he wrote in his 2020 Stonewall acceptance speech, it, the world, will become something else, and it is our job to create the future in the image that we hold in our hearts and bones and fists. Tonight, Kyle will introduce us to a kinder world when he talks about his award-winning book, When Aiden Became a Brother. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Kate. Where did I call myself a proud and unabashed pessimist? I believe you, I just don't remember.
In a blog, in one of your blogs. Yes, you did.
That is not incorrect, but no one has yet quoted that at me, so it was a bit surprising.
Yes, in one of your blogs, yes.
Okay, noted. So it seems like our plan for tonight is I'm going to read aloud from this beloved and somewhat battered copy of When Aiden Became a Brother. Wait, can you not? Oh no, it's because my background is blurred. I'm gonna fix that problem right now. One moment, please. Choose virtual background, nothing. Okay, should be fine. You're welcome to scrutinize the books behind me, but note that this is not my entire collection of books. It's just a small collection of the books that I have in my house. So I'll be reading from When Aiden Became a Brother. And then I will be sharing some information about the book, like little parts of the story that you can't necessarily know without someone explaining it to you. And then my new friend Caitlin is going to join me in conversation. She has some questions for me. And I also believe that there's a Q&A function. So if you have questions for me, I believe you're also able to add those there. And then if there's time, I might read to you from my new novel. So we'll see. Is it okay if I get started reading, or is there anything else we need to do now? Okay, good to go. I'm going to move my mug of tea so I don't accidentally knock it over. That would be a problem. So this is When Aiden Became a Brother. The words are by me, Kyle Lukoff, and the illustrations are by Keilani Juanita, who actually lives up in the Napa Valley area, which is pretty cool. And I'm going to hold the book like this. And you should be able to see the illustrations pretty well, especially if you spotlight my screen or make it bigger on your end. It should be easier to see if you do that. I'm going to do that to myself as well, so I can see what I'm doing. So this is When Aiden Became a Brother. When Aiden was born, everyone thought he was a girl. His parents gave him a pretty name. His room looked like a girl's room, and he wore clothes that other girls liked wearing. But as Aiden got bigger, he hated the sound of his name. He felt like his room belonged to someone else, and he always ripped or stained his clothes accidentally on purpose. Everyone thought he was just a different kind of girl. Some girls had rooms full of science experiments and bug collections. Lots of girls didn't wear dresses. But Aiden didn't feel like any kind of girl. He was really another kind of boy. It was hard to tell his parents what he knew about himself, but it was even harder not to. It took everyone some time to adjust, and they learned a lot from other families with transgender kids like him. Aiden explored different ways of being a boy. He tried out lots of names until one stuck. They changed his bedroom into a place where he belonged. He also took much better care of his new clothes. Then, one day, Mom and Dad had something to tell him. "I'm going to have a baby," Mom announced. "A baby?" said Aiden. "Does that mean I get to be the big brother?" "Of course," said Dad, ruffling his hair. Aiden thought that being a big brother was an important job for a boy like him. He wanted to make sure that this baby would feel understood right away. The baby needed clothes, so Aiden and his mom went shopping. There were so many choices. Would the baby like seahorses or penguins better? Are you having a boy or a girl? Asked a lady. Aiden didn't like it when people asked if he was a boy or a girl, and he hoped the baby couldn't hear yet. He was glad when mom just smiled and said, "I'm having a baby." The baby's room needed to be painted, so Aiden and his dad went to the hardware store. Dad chose a gallon of sky blue paint, and Aiden added a puffy cloud white. "Are you excited for your new brother or sister?" asked the paint guy. "I'm excited to be a big brother," Aiden said. The paint guy looked confused. Aiden could tell that he wanted to ask a different question and was glad to have his dad there. The big rollers were fun to paint with. "This room feels just like being outside," Aiden exclaimed. He had always felt trapped in his bedroom before they fixed it, but his new sibling wouldn't have to feel that way. "You're right," said Dad. "Let's make some shapes in the clouds." Every baby needs a name. Aiden loved getting to choose his own, but he remembered that it had been hard for his parents to let go of the name they gave him. He looked for names that could fit this new person, no matter who they grew up to be. And on this page, it says 50,000 names for babies and babies. And some of the names he picks are sky and forest and moss and river. Babies need someone to read to them. So Aiden practiced and practiced and practiced. Dad wanted to teach Aiden how to change diapers. Maybe later, said Aiden. He decided that picking flowers for his mom was more important. I think Aiden just doesn't want to learn how to change diapers. That's my guess. 2 weeks before the baby's due date, Aiden started to worry. Maybe he should have picked different clothes. The blue walls might be too bright. He wished he could ask the baby which name they liked best. Mom came to tuck him in. "Are you feeling okay, sweetie?" she asked. Aiden put his hands over where he thought the baby's ears would be. "Do you think the baby will be happy with everything?" he whispered. "I don't want them to feel like I did when I was little, but what if I get everything wrong? What if I don't know how to be a good big brother?" Mom hugged him tight. "When you were born, we didn't know you were going to be our son. We made some mistakes, but you helped us fix them. And you taught us how important it is to love someone for exactly who they are. This baby is so lucky to have you, and so are we." The next morning, Aiden found the boxes of his old baby pictures. He looked so different back then. It hadn't been easy, but he liked the boy he was growing into. Maybe everything wouldn't be perfect for this baby. Maybe he would have to fix mistakes he didn't even know he was making, and maybe that was okay. Aiden knew how to love someone, and that was the most important part of being a brother. And then these gold balloons say, "It's a baby." So at the end of this book is an author's note. And that is a note that the author, which is me, writes for the people reading this book, which is you. I'm going to read you a little bit from the author's note just to share a little bit more about myself and how this book came to be. So this says, "When I was born, everyone thought I was a girl, but my story is very different from Aiden's. I don't have a little sibling, but I do have a big brother. I liked wearing dresses, and it took me much longer to discover that I was a boy. Of course, some parts of my story are very much like Aiden's, and that might be true for you too. If you're a kid who is transgender like Aiden, or transgender but not like Aiden, I'm hoping this story helps you understand what you're feeling and helps you talk about it if you're ready. You might also feel like Aiden in other ways. He knows what it's like to not quite belong, and you might feel that way sometimes too. People don't always see Aiden how he wants to be seen, and you might know what that feels like. Maybe you worry about making mistakes. Aiden is a transgender kid, and he's also just a kid like you." So that's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to unpin my own video because I do not need to see what I look like quite as much. So what I think I'll do now is just go through this and share a little bit about details in the book that someone might not notice if they're not being pointed out to you. So a few things that I really love are, so in this page, you might notice that on the mirror that Aiden is looking into, there's a piece of paper that is flipped up over the mirror. And what I didn't notice for a long time is that on this very first spread in Aiden's bedroom, that mirror is off to the corner. And if you look really closely, you can see the paper taped onto it with a sad face. It's a little bit hard to see, but I think you can. And then a thing that I think is also super cool is in this same spread behind Aiden in this easel, he drew a picture. And this looks like a picture of what he wants to look like. And then if you flip forward 2 pages, that picture looks exactly like how he looks in this spread. It makes more sense if you see it in person, but it's a really, really cool image. Another thing that I think is cool that is mirrored in this book is in this page where we meet all the other families with transgender kids like Aiden. If you look really closely, you'll see a bunch of different kinds of grownups and also a bunch of different kids. And then at the very end of the book, you might notice that those same grownups and those same kids are at this baby's party. Like that grown-up is in that page, and so is that person with that fun haircut, and that kid with the like big high hair is in the earlier page too. So all these people, we see them as being part of Aiden's life the whole time. And I really love that detail. That is also something that I didn't notice for a super long time. Some other cool things that I would love to point out are on this page where it says there are so many choices. Would the baby like seahorses or penguins better? That is actually a little bit of a joke that I put into this book that a lot of people might not notice. And the joke is that both the word seahorse and the word penguin have sort of a double meaning when trans people are using them. A seahorse is something that sometimes we might call a transgender father who decides to give birth, because you know how seahorse dads like also hold the babies inside their body. Some trans men who have babies like to say that they're seahorse dads. And then I chose the word penguin because penguin is a joke for there's some guys who aren't trans, but if you looked at them, you might think that they are. And we call them penguins because they look like they're wearing tuxedos, but they're not. It's a joke that doesn't really make sense, but it is a joke that is important to me because I think it's funny. And that's why I put that in there. Sometimes people ask me on this page where it said, the pink guy looked confused. Aiden could tell that he wanted to ask a different question and was glad to have his dad there. Sometimes people ask me what I think the pink guy was going to ask. And to be honest, I don't really know. I think that there are a lot of questions that this person might have for Aiden, and I don't really know what they might be. And I don't really know what he means by those questions, but I know, I remember back when I was much earlier in my transition, I was never sure what people were thinking when they looked at me. And I never really knew who they saw when they looked in my direction. So people would say things that would make me just feel really confused and not sure who they were talking to. Like I remember one time I was at my job at a bookstore and someone came up to me and he either said, "Excuse me, ma'am," or "Excuse me, man," but those 2 words sound very similar. And so I didn't know if he was calling me a ma'am or a man. And I knew that one would make me feel good about myself and one would make me feel bad. But there was no good way of asking him what he meant because that would just make everyone feel more confused. And I wanted that question to be open in this scene to also help you understand what it feels like to like not really know what someone sees when they're looking at you and know that there's no real safe way to find out. Are there any other details? I like all the animals in the clouds here. Kaylani is fantastic at doing details. My favorite detail in this page is the cat paw. I think that's super cute. And also one time I was at an event for trans kids and their families, and there was a family where every kid had a name that was on this page somewhere. And I thought that was really cool. They hadn't even read this book before. They just all chose these names by themselves. And then I think the last detail that I want to share is that this image of Aiden right here is also a tattoo that I got from this book right there. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can see him right there on my arm with the cat on top of him. I think that is all that I feel like there's more that I could share, but I wonder if it's time for me to just stop talking directly at my camera and maybe time for Caitlin, if you had questions that you wanted to ask me, because that part is always a lot more fun.
No, you're doing amazing, Kyle. And thank you so much for reading to us. And then also kind of just giving that insider's perspective of some things that we may have missed if we weren't talking with the author of such an amazing book. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that. I think for all of the aspiring authors out there and writers, I would like to know, and I hope they want to know as well, like just about your journey and like, how did you get into writing and what inspires you? And like, what does that look like? Where do you go? All the details you want to share.
Yeah, so it's funny. Every time someone asks me this question, the answer gets a little bit longer because I've been doing it for a little bit longer. And my answer used to look like this, and then it started to look like this, and now it looks much more like this. I never really thought to myself, I want to be a writer someday. That never seemed like a job that I could have. But I also know that, especially once I graduated from college, I just started writing stories. Not the only reason that I started writing was because I was bored and I was lonely. And having a writing project to work on helped me feel less bored, and it helped me feel less lonely. And it just became something that I did just to avoid those feelings that I didn't like. And then the summer before I got my job at an elementary school, it was the summer of 2012, I decided that I wanted to write a young adult novel about a transgender boy, because I knew of a couple at the time, but they were both by cis people, and I didn't like that. And I thought that I could maybe be the first trans man to write a young adult novel about a trans guy. So I worked on this project. And I tried sending it to agents and I tried sending it to editors, and nobody liked it. And I decided that I didn't want to self-publish. That didn't seem like something that I felt like doing. So I gave up on that novel, and I decided to see if anyone was interested in this picture book idea that I had had rattling around in the back of my head for a very long time. And I sent that manuscript to an agent, and that turned into my first book called The Storytelling of Ravens. And then she also helped me sell my second book, which is called Explosion at the Poem Factory. I have copies above my head on that bookshelf that I could get, maybe if anyone wants to see them. But I still was working at my job as an elementary school librarian, and still not really sure if writing was ever going to be more than just a somewhat successful hobby. And then I got the idea for when Aiden became a brother, and I ended up selling that one by myself without my agent. And then not long after that, I decided to keep working on a middle grade novel idea that I had, which turned into Too Bright to See. And once I got a deal for that one, I decided that it was time to leave my job as a librarian, not because I didn't love it, but because I could either give 50% of myself to librarianship and 50% of myself to writing, or I could give 100% of myself to one or the other. And I decided to try giving 100% of myself to writing, because if that ever stopped working out, I could just be a librarian again. And that's the best job ever. So it wouldn't even feel like I was, it wouldn't feel like I was failing. It would just feel like I was going back to this thing that I also loved to do.
I love that. And how do you connect with such an amazing illustrator? I mean, the illustrations in this book are just incredible. So how did you meet your illustrator, Kaylani? Like, how does that work? How do you work together? Because you also mentioned earlier that she lives on the West Coast and you're on the East Coast. So how does that all come together?
Yeah, so actually this is one of the most common things that people believe about picture books, but the author usually has nothing to do with the illustration. We don't get to choose the illustrator. We don't even get to talk to the illustrator. Sometimes we might even write notes for what we want the illustration to look like, and our editors will take those out of the manuscript that they send to the illustrator. So the illustrator doesn't even know what we're thinking the book should look like. So, when it came to my first book, A Storytelling of Ravens, my editor said to me, "We've chosen your illustrator. We hope you like her." And then when the book was done, she said, "Here is the finished draft. We hope you like it." And I was like, "I hope I do too." When it came to When Aiden Became a Brother, I didn't have power. Like, I didn't have anything in my contract that said that I got to make these choices. But my editor, Cheryl Klein, is a wonderful person who also wanted this book to feel as true to both of us as it possibly could. So she let me express my opinion about my choice of illustrator. And as soon as I saw Kehlani's work, I said, I want her. She's amazing. This looks perfect. I love her work. Can we please get her? And Cheryl said, well, we'll see, which made me feel very anxious. But she did end up choosing Kehlani, who accepted the job, which I was thrilled about. We weren't allowed to talk at all during the process. And there are probably a lot of different reasons for that, but one big reason I think is because, illustrating a book is its own art form, and the illustrator is 50% of the book. Without their art, it would be an entirely different story. And it's sort of like respecting their ability to also make their own choice and their own interpretation and make the story as much theirs as it is mine. And they don't want authors saying like, no, it shouldn't look like that. That should be yellow and not blue. And why does, it's about like respecting their space to create, because they don't get to tell us what to do. And it's only fair that we don't get to tell them what to do. There was one detail that I did ask to be changed early on, because also because my editor wanted to make sure that this book felt like true and good to both of us, I was allowed to make some very small decisions. So in this very first spread, where this pink poofy thing is, there had been a framed letter A, and the A was pink, and it had like a frilly pink frame around it. And that was indicating that Aiden's name used to be, Allison or Ashley or Ariana. And I asked if we could remove that detail because I don't know what Aiden's name used to be. I don't even know if it started with the letter A. And I didn't want to let people think about it. And I did not want to give people permission to guess about what it might be. And of course, they're like, oh yeah, no, that's totally fine. Of course, we're going to take that down. Because that wasn't me saying like, how dare you, ruin my manuscript. It was this one detail is actually like mildly transphobic and I would like to remove it. But what's also really cool is that, so it's, pretty obvious that I am white and that Aiden does not look like me in that regard. His mother is Black, his father is Filipino, so he has brown skin. And Kehlani made that decision because her mother is Filipina and her father is Black, and her skin is very close to Aiden's skin color. So she wanted to put her family and her story into this book in the same way that I did. And so it kind of feels like we had a baby together, which is really neat because Kehlani is just she is honestly one of the coolest people I've ever met. And I love that she made this as much her book as it is mine.
Wow. I'm so happy that I asked that question because I've always wondered that, and to hear that you're actually working individually as artists and creators, and you hope that there's this marriage that works, for the messaging. And it sounds like you found that with Kehlani, which is really awesome. So how long does it take start to finish to complete something like this book?
It depends on the book. So yeah, it really depends on the book. My first book, I started writing it in like 2007, and I only started trying to sell it in like 2015. And then it came out in 2018. Whereas when Aiden became a brother, I started working on it in, oh gosh, time is so hard. I think I first got the idea for it also in 2015, but it went through 3 really major drafts with my former agent. And then when we stopped working together, it only went through much smaller drafts once I placed it with an editor. And then that book took 18 months after selling it to it coming out. So that whole process was probably also about 3 years. My first novel, To Bright to See, I started working on that one also probably in 2015, I think. But I didn't finish writing it until 2019. And then it didn't come out until 2021. So that book had a very long journey from the first idea to finally getting to hold it in my hands. But my second novel, I started writing it in March of 2020. Ooh. And then I finished it. I finished the first draft in July of 2020. And then it came out last month. So that was a much, much quicker thing. Every book takes the amount of time that it takes. I have a book coming out next summer that I literally wrote in one night. I wrote it on my stoop on the 4th of July, and it's a board book. It's a rhyming book for babies, and it's only 126 words. So that one did not take very much time.
Wow. So that was actually one of my questions was, can you write multiple books at the same time? And it sounds like, again, it kind of depends.
So yes, it does depend. I can work on different projects at the same time if they're very, very, very different. So like literally this morning, I sat at my desk. Well, I sat on the couch because my desk isn't set up yet because I just moved. But I sat on the couch and I spent 2 hours working on the novel that I'm writing because I have a deadline for that one. And I can't talk about that one, but it's like an adventure. It's like a funny adventure kind of story. And then I like got a snack and I went to the bathroom and then I sat back down and I worked on line edits for this picture book that I also have, which is nonfiction and historical and very serious. So I can work on those 2 books at the same time because they're so different that they occupy entirely different spaces in my brain. But in 2019 and 2020, I was working on my 2 novels at the same time. And that was a terrible mistake because Too Bright to See is a pretty like the energy of it is fairly solemn. And it is also written in the first person present tense, whereas Different Kinds of Fruit is a much more cheerful and bubbly book, and that is written in first person past tense. And working on those 2 books at the same time was very bad for my brain because I was having to move between these different emotional registers and also literal like tenses. And I kept making mistakes, and I am not making that mistake ever again. Hopefully, I hope I don't have to make that mistake ever again.
Live and learn, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. So I know you're probably familiar because you're part of our rainbow kits for MVUSD. And I just kind of want to know, like, what are your thoughts about that? And what are you excited about with us embarking on this amazing journey as a
Can you share a little bit more about it with me? Because I read some information about it today, but I could definitely use more background.
Absolutely. And I'll go ahead and invite Kate McMillan to also help to supplement.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. But essentially we have these beautiful kids that are going out for the K through 5th grade grades, and each one has a corresponding book that goes along with the grade levels so that teachers can start to introduce these amazing books to just help build capacity and diversity and acceptance and even vocabulary for our students at beginning school. So anything you'd like to add to that, Kate?
Yeah, this was a project that we started last August, and we worked with First Five of California, and each bin will have books that go along that are appropriate for the grade level. It also has curriculum and manipulative. Some of the curriculum we adapted from San Francisco Unified. And this is in support of SB 48, the FAIR Act, which requires us to include marginalized communities, especially LGBTQ, in our curriculum. So the teachers are being trained, and the library techs are also going to be trained. And hopefully we will have these out. It's been a really big project within probably by the end of the month. And what they will do, it's sort of like we had a blue bin project before, which was Lexile level books that went into the classrooms. What it will do is that the bins will rotate into the classrooms by a period of time. They will be checked out, the bin will be checked out, but not the contents through the library. And we have background in doing that, like I said, with the blue bin. So this, I think, will be, this will be amazing. It's really much needed, especially in these very dark, trying times.
I love hearing that. It sounds like an amazing program. It's of course an honor to be included in it. And also I wish, oh, I see it. There's Aiden. I wish that it didn't feel like a risky decision, but I also know that my picture books are now showing up on lists of like banned materials and materials being removed from classrooms and even some public libraries. And I know that my books are good, or like, you might not like it because they're too bright, or like you disagree, but like, I know that my books are appropriate. I know that they are well written. I know that they are developmentally appropriate. And I know that anyone trying to argue otherwise has a different motive that is not entirely about books. And it is saying that people like me shouldn't be allowed to exist in the first place. And I don't like that. And I appreciate that these books are going to be finding their ways to kids and families and homes even though there are people saying that they should not be. That really means a lot to me, because I know that there are invitations that I'm not getting. I know that there are schools that have wanted to bring me but are too afraid to do so. And I really appreciate the people who are being supportive and also not letting these like very few but very loud voices like sway them in a dangerous direction.
I think one of the things that's most important for us, Kyle, is that this is State Senate Bill 48. It is state law for all of California.
Mhm.
And we also have a very supportive board who approved the board approval for all the books and the program. So, we are probably more forced, a little bit more on the cutting edge than most districts, but I think that it will come more and more, especially with how the reaction has been to California to the Supreme Court leak. So,
Mhm.
Yeah. And the books are what I really like, since I have yours right here, is there's a lot of really great discussion starting questions. Look at Aiden's expression. How do you think he feels? Look at Aiden's parents. How do you think they are feeling? And just getting students and having the teacher guide that conversation with students is really, I think, powerful. And it's also a nice scaffold if you are, learning and navigating some new waters. There was a quote in your book that really stood out for me when Aiden asked his parents, "What if I don't know how to be a good big brother?" And I think that you could interchange good big brother with good teacher, good friend, good parent. Like, what would you say to somebody who is a well-intentioned person, but might still mess up or have a misstep?
I might ask you to repeat that question, because I do want to mention one thing that you brought to my mind. It's funny, sometimes I'll want to go on school visits with when Aiden became a brother, and I'll get pushback from like teachers or administrators who are saying, but what if the kids don't understand the trans part? What if they just think that it's a book about becoming a big brother? And I'm like, that's fine. Like, yeah, like you might not realize this, but I wrote the story to be accessible for different readers on different levels. Like, if you just see this about becoming a good sibling, that's fine. That's actually just okay. Like, it's not a big deal. But so your question is, what would I say to people who are feeling like similar but different to Aiden? Like, what if I am not good at this? I can't speak to everyone's anxieties, since different people are coming from different places. But one thing that I've often shared with teachers is that I have teachers who tell me that they're so afraid that they're not going to do a good job by their like trans or queer or questioning students, that they just kind of like freeze up, and they end up going in these like weird torturous directions trying to be as inclusive as possible. And what I always say is like, you already know how to do this. If you already know how to create a supportive and welcoming classroom community, then you already know that you might have a kid who goes by one name at home and one name at school. You already know that your kids might feel sad for reasons that you don't understand. You already know that your kid might have anxieties about going to the bathroom, because like lots of kids do. It's a scary place. Like it, if you don't know how to, if you don't already have the building blocks in place to support your like trans or queer or questioning students, then I am curious about whether you are actually in fact supporting all of your students, or whether you just think that you are. I remember when one of my kids, she hadn't, so her name wasn't Marianne, but I'm going to say Marianne for now because that's, close enough. Her mom called her Marianne. And then when she introduced herself to me, she called herself Mary. And I said, oh, that's so interesting. I know that the name that your mom and that your teacher calls you is Marianne. Would you like me to call you Mary? And she said, yeah, you should call me Mary. And I said, okay, would you like me to share that with your teachers? Or are you okay with you being Mary in the library and Marianne in your classroom? And she said, no, I can be Marianne in class. I just want to be Mary in the library. And I checked in with her a couple times over the course of the next few years, and her answer stayed the same. And I don't know why. And it doesn't really matter. And like, as far as I know, this kid wasn't having like gender stuff. She was just figuring out what felt right to her and what she wanted people to call her. And like that. And I think that because I'm trans, it made me even more open to that, but you don't have to like respect that kids are entire people and that kids are human beings, that they also like get to want things and they also get to figure things out. Yeah, that's basically it, I guess.
No, I love that. And I'm really hopeful that this curriculum is just going to help to like build up the skill set and the courage, even just to be that person that is more inclusive. So I'm curious, what's next for you? You seem to just be like on a massive roll. So what is next? Give us like little tidbits, whatever you can share, because I'm excited. I'm a huge Kyle Lukoff fan, and that's actually my brother's name. So I'm already partial to you based on that. But yeah.
Gosh, I have too many books coming out. I need to stop. So my first early chapter book came out yesterday. It's called Mermaid Days. It's a 3-book series put out from the Acorn line of Scholastic. It's about a mermaid named Vera and her octopus friend named Beaker, and they just go on adventures. They do mermaid things. It's intended for early readers, so it's like more challenging than the Elephant and Piggy books, but less challenging than like Magic Tree House, Junie B. Jones, like that kind. So it's like in that middle ground. So that came out, the first one came out yesterday. My next picture book comes out in July, and it's called If You're a Kid Like Gavin. And that is my first nonfiction book. It's about a young trans activist named Gavin Grimm and how he worked with the ACLU to help ensure bathroom access in his school for himself and other trans students. That one comes out in July, and I co-wrote that. So Gavin and I wrote that book together, and then it was illustrated by Jay Yang. And then what else am I allowed to talk about? I mentioned my book for babies, which comes out next summer, which is great because I have nephews now. They're going to be, by the time that book comes out, they'll be like a year and a half. So they'll still be at like board book age. I'm also allowed to talk about my next 2 picture books. I'm really excited about both of them. One of them is called Dear Zoe, and it is epistolary, and it is a picture book told in the form of apology letters, where this boy is saying, like, he starts off by saying, "I'm sorry you got so mad." And then we watch his journey to like learning how to like actually take responsibility for what he did and try to fix the hurt that he caused. And then after that one, I have too many. After that one, I have another one called Just What to Do. And it's about the different ways to support people in the ways that work for them, even if it's not the ways that you think they need. And then there's more, but those ones haven't been announced yet, which means that they're still secrets. I don't know why publishing works that way. It doesn't make sense to me, but there's this rule that you're not allowed to talk about books until they've been announced. I don't know why.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. And I know you had also mentioned if we had a little bit of time, you would give us another little tidbit of another, was it a novel that we were
Yeah,
gonna
do you want me to read from the beginning of my novel that came out last month?
Of course.
Okay, let me grab it. It's right here. So this is called Different Kinds of Fruit. This might be my favorite book that I've written so far. I really, really, really love it. It's very different from Too Bright to See. That book was sad, and this book is funny, in my opinion. You might not think it's funny, but I do. I'll read you a little bit from the first chapter, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. Chapter 1. Okay, I know that the sunset is majestic and timeless and awe-inspiring and everything, but also there was some ice cream dripping onto my hand, and it was extremely important that I tend to that at once. And yes, the light did spread out over the water like sparkly popcorn, and yes, it was cool the way the sun hovered trembling above the horizon. However, I also had a big scoop of Nutella ice cream, which is my absolute favorite, in a waffle cone, which is also my absolute favorite, and my ice cream was melting fast in the hottest August on record. The sun would set again tomorrow, but my hand might be sticky and gross for the whole ride home because my dad, unlike my mom, doesn't carry a purse filled with wet wipes. I told you to get it in a cup, Dad said. He was taking leisurely bites of his mint chocolate chip, gazing out at the Pacific. Little bites, like he had all the time in the world, which I guess he did, because even if his ice cream melted into soup, which is great, I love ice cream soup in an appropriate container, he wouldn't have the whole sticky hands problem that I was currently struggling to prevent. Not to mention that I was wearing one of my cutest dresses, cream colored with a halter top and a swishy skirt, and I did not want it to have a sticky brown splotch forever, even if I was about to outgrow it. I grumbled at him, working my tongue into that space between my ring finger and pinky. "What'd you say?" he asked. "I said grumble, grumble, grumble." A compelling point, said Dad, and turned his attention back to the sunset. I turned back too and noticed that the railing came up to his belly and it hit me right above mine. I was almost as tall as my dad now. When did that happen? I'm going to stop there because that's a good introduction to Annabelle and her dad and just the way she talks about things.
That's amazing. Kyle, you're such an amazing spirit and human and author. I just feel so privileged to be here and to bear witness to your art. You know, this is really such a game changer and a world changer for the positive, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here with us tonight, to answer my questions, to share.
They were so good. Thank you so much.
It was amazing. And I don't know if Kate has anything else to share, but I just really, a lot of gratitude. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Let me unmute. There we go. Yes, of course I have something to say. I always do. Oh, Kyle, you're going to keep us in books for a long time. That's exciting.
True.
Yes. You know, you're on a roll. You're going to end up probably having more Stonewall Newberries and assorted awards than we can count. You'll be so famous. You know, it's just, like I said, amazing. And I have not read your Newbery Award winner, but When Aiden is just, it's just a stunning book. It really is.
Thank you.
On,
I hope
on
you like
some,
to write to see.
Yes, and I will read that. And it's on so many different levels, both for the child, the parent, the caregiver, the teacher. It's really a tour de force.
Thank you. I'm getting all emotional now.
Oh, good. We like that. So I hope you'll come back again when you have, we'll do 3 or 4 of your books.
Maybe next time I can come in person. We'll see.
Yeah, wouldn't that be lovely? It really would. Yes.
Yeah.
And you can stop and see your illustrator.
And I can. Maybe she could come with. Maybe we could do a joint event.
Oh, you know, that's really, we had an illustrator once. We had Juana Ryan Neal, and she was the illustrator, and it was fabulous. The kids absolutely loved talking about art because, you know, everybody at that age are an artist at heart.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I want to thank you. It's been so enjoyable.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Good. Good. I think, do you have anything else to say, Caitlin?
I'm just so thankful and I'm so happy that we had this opportunity to really just dig into it. And to echo what you said, Kate, I'm just excited to have Kyle back again to share some more of his beautiful work. So thank you so much.
Well, you have my email address.
Oh, Kyle, I also forgot, I'm always supposed to tell you this. This book is also, your book is also available in all our school libraries, and it's available on Overdrive through Sora, and so will be your accompanying books that as you publish them. They will be in the libraries and on Sora for the kids.
That's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, it is 3 hours later where I am, and
Yes.
it is my bedtime.
It is your bedtime, but probably your kitty cat's bedtime.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And we'll see you soon.
Definitely. Bye, everyone.
Bye.